We did the Swiss league, so of course we had to check out Germany's hockey league as well. Should have done it first if anything. Here are the Deutsche Eishockey Liga arenas. Kurt Frenzel Stadion. For a while this was the only active professional ice hockey arena in the country. When it opened way back in 1938, it consisted of an open-air natural ice rink that was sunken into the earth. The interior walls of the arena were actually just earth. It's obviously been completely renovated and redeveloped since those days. There's not much earth in here, but it's an interesting origin story. Mercedes-Benz Arena. From ground level, you could be mistaken for thinking that this was the marquee Mercedes-Benz showroom. That grand glazed facade would be perfect for showing off the range. But instead, it's the city of Berlin's premier indoor sporting venue. Which is even better. There are several other features that set this place apart, the most apparent of which is probably the unusual 8-sided video board. You see plenty of 4-sided ones, or maybe a wraparound 360-degree one, but very few octo screens. Ice Arena Bremerhaven. Bremerhaven is a small city, and fittingly this is the smallest arena in the league in terms of capacity. But it makes up for that with a feature that I really appreciate, and that is inside where there are plenty of timber beams supporting the roof. It does pale in comparison to the sheer amount of timber we saw on some of the Swiss arenas, but still. I think even a partially timber roof makes a world of difference. PSD Bank Dome. Now that's a distinctive looking exterior. It's kind of like a kidney bean that has been mostly covered in metallic cladding. Once more, there's a big wall of glass that greets the spectators as they enter. Well, I should clarify, when I said it greets the spectators, I wasn't being literal. I know technology has come a long way in recent years, but I don't think we have arrived at the point of talking glass panels just yet. Although on second thought, I guess you could be watching this from a talking glass panel right now. Called a TV. The talking glass panel could be me. Eissporthalle Frankfurt. Frankfurt was actually the site of the first ever artificial ice rink to be built in continental Europe. That was for an exhibition in 1882. To put that into perspective, the unification of Germany happened 11 years prior. This place was also built in the 80s, the 1980s though. And come to think of it, the exterior does kind of look like an 80s shopping centre, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The inside looks more like one of those places where people play hockey. Saturn Arena. I know what you're thinking, but no, Saturn's tourism board has not purchased the naming rights to this venue. This Saturn is the largest electronics retailer in the country. Oddly enough, the biggest electronics store in Albania is called Neptune. I guess planets and electronics stores go together like bread and butter. Anyway, enough about planets. This venue is relatively simple with a single tier of symmetrical seating, arched roof, and well, that's about it, but it gets the job done. Eissporthalle Iserlohn. I've got to say, I do quite like their logo, however, doesn't their mascot just look like a bit of a cock? I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but still. Interestingly, this arena was one of 4 venues in Germany that was built in the early 70s to near identical specifications. Of course, there's been a few renovations here since then, so I guess it does still have some of its own unique characteristics, to an extent. Lanxess Arena. We're in Germany's most pleasant smelling city, Cologne. Not to be confused with the city of Aftershaven down in Bavaria, or Perfumerborg up north. This place has a couple of unique aspects. Firstly, this huge arch supporting the weight of the roof, which is akin to Wembley. And I believe it's also the largest arena in the country that hosts only hockey. Well, it does host concerts and whatnot, but its only sporting tenant at the moment is this club. That's certainly not due to lack of amenities. It's got plenty of those. Perhaps the rent is high. SAP Arena. We've already seen a Mercedes-Benz arena, but Mannheim, where we are now, was the home of Carl Benz of Mercedes-Benz, who set up the world's first automobile factory right here in Mannheim. But this arena's name has nothing to do with cars. It is instead named after a software company who are not just a sponsor, they actually finance this construction by means of an interest-free loan. In exchange, they get to operate it and have their name on it for 30 years. A win-win situation in my book. It does seem like a state-of-the-art venue. Oh, and it looks like there's a cheeky little bit of timber up there. Olympia Ice Hauler. Unfortunately, the roof here doesn't match those of the famous nearby Olympiastadion and the Olympia Hauler next door to it. This is rather dull by comparison, but then again, most roofs are. Inside they've kept it relatively simple as well, but it's got all its ducks in a row. There are so many of these Red Bull-owned teams. They just keep expanding. You know, I even heard the other day that they've even started selling energy drinks with Red Bull branding on them in order to advertise their teams. It must work because these guys are reigning champs. Arena Nürnberger Versicherung. Not only is this next door to a football stadium, but literally next door, there are 2 additional rinks that I believe are open to the public. One thing I like about this place is that despite not having a particularly large capacity, there are 2 evenly proportioned tiers of seating, and the top tier is basically hovering right above the lower tier, so it means the spectators are closer to the rink. I also think it looks a lot better than a single tiered seating bowl. Helios Arena. Similarly, this arena has a couple of attached rinks, although one of them is specifically for curling, so you can basically disregard that one. The club that plays here are called the Wild Wings, which got me thinking, if the Sabres of the NHL are ever considering a rebrand, Buffalo Wild Wings just has a certain ring to it, Speaking of NHL, this arena was the first in Germany with an NHL-sized rink, which is slightly narrower than most European rinks. Eisstadion am Pulverturm. Pulverturm means powder tower. It's named after this Pulverturm across the street, which was used to store gunpowder back in the day. Now it sits idly by. See, as good as it sounds, there is still a cost to having peace in Western Europe. It put a hard-working Pulverturm out of work. Is that really worth all the peace and prosperity? Yes. Like the venue we saw at the start of the video, this arena was built on the site of a pre-existing natural rink, with the roof being built nearly a decade after the seating was. Ice Arena Wolfsburg. Wolfsburg Grizzlies. Props to them for not choosing the obvious nickname of Wolves, I guess. Do grizzly bears and wolves get along? Are they friends? Or would the bears make themselves some wolf first if given the chance? Oh man, I miss the sausages in Germany. So many sausages, so little time. Well, I was there for a while, just so many sausages. I'm rambling again. This may be a small venue, but I like that the seating layout is at least a little bit unconventional. And those were the Deutsche Eishockey Liga venues. As for my favourite, it's gotta be Lanxess Arena. That big arch draws you in and the interior doesn't let you down. Please consider subscribing if you're new around here. And danke for watching. Have a good eins.